it's really important to spread awareness on this as it's so prevalent in every woman's life. What is the menstrual cycle?
A really big misconception is that your menstrual cycle is simply just you bleeding. That is not what the menstrual cycle is. If you are a big gym goer or you play a sport, you can really adapt and use your training to your advantage around your menstrual cycle. How does your menstrual cycle affect the way in which you work out?
In your joints, then you're gonna feel more strain and pain when you try to move them. So both of those two things combined are gonna make it quite difficult to actually feel motivated.
This is where you can really take advantage of your training performance.
It instilled in me how true and beneficial that can be. How does it specifically affect your gains?
If you were to step on the scales, you would feel a lot lighter, just look a lot leaner.
So that's a time to consider eating in a surplus. For example, if you want to bulk up.
No pun intended! That's insane.
That is crazy.
Conversation.
Broadcasted.
Just had a stage fright.
Stage fright!
Oh.
There's such a big audience. I'm going to have to do my usual and...
Fucking annoy me, yes. It's a form of love.
What, being rude?
Yeah.
Actually is, at least with us.
I know, you are a bit old.
You're so rude. I'm 23.
My point. Because I'm staying hydrated.
It's very important to stay hydrated.
Drink your water, kids.
And adults.
And elderlies.
So they're not adults, they're just like in a realm of their own.
They are a little bit. Hi.
We are back with another podcast.
And today we're going to be talking about the menstrual cycle.
And how this affects your gym gains.
So we thought this was a really interesting topic to talk about. It's something I haven't actually heard a lot of fitness influencers or experts shed that much light on. So we thought this would be the perfect chance to inform you guys, talk a little bit about the subject, and really just normalise it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to spread awareness on this as it's so prevalent in every woman's life, although we must specify that the information we are sharing today is specific to those who aren't on any contraception.
Remember, this is a very generalised approach. All the information that we will be sharing is just general. This is not an individual thing, so it might not resonate with you, and that is okay. Everybody has different symptoms and everybody is affected differently by their period. This is just to shed some light and inform you where we can help.
So the first and most important question then is, what is the menstrual cycle?
So I was somebody who had no idea how anything worked until recently, to be honest. And I think a really big misconception is that your menstrual cycle is simply just you bleeding, as you on your period. That is not what the menstrual cycle is. It is just a stage of it. So your menstrual cycle is, by textbook definition, a 28-day cycle. This could be a little bit longer for some, and this could be even a little bit shorter for some, but predominantly it's a 28-day cycle. So in this cycle, it includes 4 main hormones, which are released in your body. You've got your FSH hormone, which is your follicle stimulating hormone. You've got your luteinizing hormone, and then you've got the two that you've probably heard of, estrogen and progesterone. So these are the 4 main hormones involved in this whole cycle. You also have 3 main stages in which your body goes through. So the 3 main stages, which Frankie will talk to more in depth about, is the follicular stage, your ovulatory stage, and your luteal stage.
Yeah. So the way all of these hormones come into play is during this cycle, which, as Abby has said, is not just you bleeding, it's much more than that. It all starts in the ovaries where eggs are made, and on average around 15 to 20 eggs are made here. Only one of these 15 to 20 eggs forms into a follicle, which is then deposited into the fallopian tube. While the egg is present in the fallopian tube, and if sperm is entered into the womb and it comes and meets the egg in the fallopian tube, that's where fertilization then occurs. So then that egg would be deposited into the womb and it would attach itself to the lining, which is where a baby is then created. If the egg is, however, not fertilized in the fallopian tube, then it just continues to travel through the tube, and instead of embedding into the womb lining, that lining then sheds, causing us to bleed.
So it's really important that we know the basics. Once we understand how our body works, we can then put in measures and we can behave accordingly.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important for optimal health, and especially if you are a big gym goer or you play a sport, you can really adapt and use your training to your advantage to work in your favour around your menstrual cycle.
Absolutely.
The next question I have is, how does your menstrual cycle affect the way in which you work out?
So during the first... fuck off! The phone just doesn't
Please
shut
keep
up.
that in there.
So during the follicular stage, which is the first stage, estrogen is higher. Therefore, our muscles build up more lactic acid. So lactic acid, I always thought of it as moving your finger. We did this in science. So if you move your finger and you keep moving it, over time, you're going to feel more strain in the joint. And that's lactic acid. So if lactic acid is more dominant in your joints, then you're gonna feel more strain and pain when you try to move them, which is why during this stage it's really important to warm up more for exercise.
In contrast to this, in the second stage, so this is your ovulatory stage, this is the time in which it's the most easiest to get pregnant. This is where the egg is in the fallopian tube, so the chances of fertilization happening is a lot higher. During this stage, estrogen is very high, like it is in the first stage, and so is testosterone. There is a big misconception that women don't actually produce testosterone. That is false. Women do. However, it is a male dominant hormone because men produce up to 20 times more testosterone.
That is crazy as a stat, isn't it?
Crazy. So, yeah. So estrogen and testosterone are at their peak during this stage, which increases your motivation, this increases your energy, which means this is the best period for you to be hitting PRs.
Not a pun intended.
What did I say? Oh,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow. Continue.
This is the... No flow intended!
How did we just do that?
That was so good. This is the best time for you to be hitting your personal bests. This is where your energy peaks. This is where you can really take advantage of your training performance and get the most out of it. This is also the best time for you to really take advantage of rest and recovery. Testosterone has properties in which it protects your muscles, which means your chances of recovery is a lot quicker, which means you can train more and you won't feel the effects as much. Things like DOMS, which is something which is known as delayed onset of muscle soreness. This is very common amongst a lot of athletes, regular gym goers, just people who engage in a lot of activity. The chances of your muscles really being sore and achy is quite high. However, this isn't straight away. This might be a day or 2 days after you train.
Hence the delayed onset.
Yeah. So with this property that testosterone provides us, your chances of that happening are reduced, which means you're less likely to feel like that and you'll be more inclined to train.
Yeah.
So this is the best time, really take advantage and really use this as an opportunity to really go in at your fitness performance.
Yeah, that's the time to hit the PRs.
Yeah. This is the period in which is before your period.
This is the period before your period. Oh my god. Following from the stage of ovulation is the luteal stage, which is during your period, so while you're bleeding. During the stage, it's very common to have cramps, and exercising can be very good at relieving them. This is also where the hormone progesterone is at its highest, so that's going to increase your body temperature and also reduce your concentration levels. So both of those two things combined are going to make it quite difficult to actually feel motivated to want to work out. As a result of this, you'll also feel very tired. So hydration is optimal. It's really important to drink as much water as possible to reduce your body temperature and to re-energize yourself.
Yeah.
You might also want to pay attention to feeling hungrier during this stage. So pay attention to what you eat and how much you're eating.
There will probably be a lot of times when you're on your period and you know that progesterone hormone has really kicked in and you just feel really shit and fatigued and you don't want to move, do any exercise. Do not force yourself to do this if you really don't feel up to it, because it will only really lead to resentment towards it. A better option, if you still want to stay active or productive, maybe engage in something else. Do something that's maybe a little bit low intense, something that's yoga, Pilates, even just getting your steps in. You know, something is better than nothing. And as Frankie's mentioned, it's really, really good to exercise when you're on and when you experience cramps. So just getting in some activity and really just keeping your body moving is really, really good for your health.
Yeah. It's about doing that in a way that suits the situation that you're experiencing, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, like you're saying, doing low impact activities is really good because you're still keeping yourself moving, but you're not overtraining to the point where you just feel even more fatigued and more uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm not somebody who tracks my period. I'm not somebody that religiously kind of works on the weeks and really monitors my behaviour. I think that if you're somebody that wants to get maybe a little bit more in tune with their body or really wants to optimise the way in which they train, you know, maybe for a couple months really pay attention to how you feel at what time of the month, and I'm sure some patterns will start to arise, and in this way you can learn at what points you feel tired, at what points you feel hungrier, more motivated. You know, it could be a really good thing to do. However, it's not something that is mandatory. It is very much a preference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything that we're covering today is very dependent upon the individual, but we are just covering the blanket approach, which is that women have a period and that's the form of the cycle.
Yeah, yes. I mean, do you track your period?
Funnily enough, I somewhat do, but I didn't realise that I did. That sounds strange, but I'm always aware of how hot and flustered I feel while I'm on my period, how heavy those cramps can feel.
Do you get really bad symptoms?
I have recently had worse symptoms. I don't know if that's to do with aging. I'm not very old, but you never get a pension on a cramp. Yeah, so I have had very bad cramps. I have felt very hot and bothered.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that that's going to affect my motivation. I never let it to the point where I don't work out, but that's also because I'm very used to training 4 times a week, if not 5. So naturally what I do, because I'm so aware of it, I end up training at least a week before my period very intensely, which is ironically the best time to train, as we've already covered. Yeah. And that's never something I've consciously thought about in this context, in this very factual, scientific, researched way.
Yeah, it's crazy when you have all the facts out in front of you and then how you can really relate that. Yeah. I think it's insane, isn't it?
I mean, I've really enjoyed this conversation and I've learned a lot from it. Yeah. Same. Even just having to recite it now to an audience has really instilled in me how true and beneficial that can be.
I mean, I know a lot of people and they have such different cramps, and I've known people that throw up every day on their period. I've known people that feel nothing.
It's just,
I mean, it's so varied, and thankfully I don't really experience bad periods. Mine are usually quite short. I don't really get cramps. I don't really have many side effects. I am pretty much the same. Maybe I'm just a little bit more irritable, but I wouldn't say it's anything that's particularly bad.
Yeah. I mean, I will note this, is that not a single woman I've spoken to has said, oh, periods are fine. No, I don't experience anything.
Absolutely not.
Everyone, and even people who are on contraception as well, they'll have different things to say about that. So I think it's well worth paying attention to, whether or not it's within a gym context, but especially within a gym context, as what we're saying, is
Yeah.
is you can use that to your advantage if you're aware of it. And I don't think it requires much attention either.
No.
So
Definitely. It's just, it's something quite simple but really effective. I think as well, something that I think I love to talk about, right, is how much me and Frankie are synced.
oh god,
You knew this was going to happen.
I knew.
You knew
yeah.
I'd say this. I like to refer to us as Bluetooth. Because we're so in sync, it's a joke. No, it's a joke, seriously. We came on at like the same time.
But it's not just once, it's a lot of times now.
Because all I do is spend time with you. I have no other friends.
Go connect to someone else's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you betrayed me. Seriously, we come on the same day and we finish on the same day.
Yeah, and we're both irritable and
We're
annoyed.
both the
and
same.
everything.
We both have the same hunger level, which is great because we'll just sit and just eat.
And we know the effects, like we know that's coming, but we still eat.
We do.
It's so hard to.
I went to her house the other day, as usual, and you should have seen, like, I had my overnight bag because I was staying, and I had my laptop and all that stuff, and then I had a big carton of milk, and I had a big packet of rice cakes and a big chocolate bar, and I just walked through the door. And I was like, hi.
I had asked you to bring snacks. I was severely craving the snack. That makes so much sense. Even there, it's not something I thought about, and that makes it even more apparent that what we're saying
It's true.
is really true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's mad.
because this happened before we knew about this.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's mad how we think, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've spoken about what the menstrual cycle is, how it works, and how this can affect training generally.
Yeah.
But how does it specifically affect your gains?
So, obviously, yeah, as you've said, there are effects when you're working out and your actual performance. But in terms of the way you look, it's something completely different. So when estrogen is high, which is usually in the ovulatory stage and in the follicular stage, so the first two stages, so when you're not on your period, when estrogen and testosterone are highest, this is the time in which you're least likely to bloat and you're least likely to hold on to water, which means if you were to step on the scales, you would feel a lot lighter. You would come up as a lot lighter, as well as you would just look a lot leaner, therefore. So this is the time in which you might feel the best because you feel like you look the best. You know, muscle growth is the best during this stage due to testosterone. So the chances of really building muscle and really just looking like what you're doing is paying off, it will definitely be during that period.
So in the stage of ovulation, so just before your period comes on, that's when you will be at your heaviest because your bloating will be higher and so will your water content. That's why it's so important to weigh yourself on the same day each month and at the same time because your weight is so fluctuated.
Yeah, in previous episodes we have gone over progress trackers and what we think is effective, and we have spoken to using the scales, and this is one of the reasons in which I don't really like using the scales too much, because this is just a prime example of how much your weight will fluctuate. You know, and again, it's something that's going on inside you that you have no idea about consciously, really.
Yeah.
And it will really mess with your mind. This is also why we have kind of touched on using other methods to track your progress.
Yeah, so progress pictures can be a really good example. But then again, you want to time those progress pictures.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So
when you're on your period in the luteal stage, your progesterone is highest, which is going to increase your appetite as well. So that's a time to consider eating in a surplus. For example, if you want to bulk up and make more gains that way.
yeah, might be a bit easier for you to do so because you'll be a bit hungrier. In contrast to when estrogen is high, your appetite is suppressed more so, which is good if, you know, you're trying to kind of slim down a little bit or you're trying to really watch what you eat. You won't feel as hungry, so you won't overeat as much. However, this could make it a lot harder to reach your goals if you're trying to eat a certain amount of calories or you're trying to hit your macros. You might just not be hungry, which means it probably will be a little bit harder to eat that extra meal.
To add to what we're telling you, we looked up some stats, and the first is that 1 in 5 women in the UK have painful periods.
And I think that's crazy, isn't it? 1 in 5.
Yeah, that's a lot of women.
It is, when you really think about it. And when you put that into perspective, and another fact which I thought was crazy was, so PMS, which is something called premenstrual syndrome. This is something that a lot of people I know suffer from. It is kind of just that really shitty feeling before you come onto your period. You know, lowered mood, cramps, just feel tired, and
Yeah.
pretty much. 3 in 4 women suffer with that. That's insane.
That is crazy. Yeah, it's not spoken enough about. Considering the stats, it's not spoken enough about.
No.
So it's been a privilege to share some information with you today about it.
We've loved it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we've both really taken on board our own information too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm certainly going to pay more attention to it moving forward.
Definitely.
Especially with when I'm eating and when I'm training.
Yeah.
What I'm expecting to see in the mirror.
Yeah, that's a very big thing, isn't it? But yeah, I think something really important just to touch on is, please remember that no matter how you're feeling and how you're looking, it is still so important to be eating, to be focusing on your health. If you really feel uncomfortable and you do feel in pain, please don't push yourself through it. Please, please, please listen to your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, listen to your body. Consider what we've said, but don't individualize it to yourself. You are your own person. You are your own unique makeup. And so you will have your own symptoms and experiences with that.
Yeah.
So,
and we're just here to try and help you take advantage of a more unfortunate thing that us as girls have to go through and make the best out of a shitty situation.
Yeah, what can be a frustrating time can be used to your advantage.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and have taken what you can from it.
We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for all the support, all the subscribing, liking and following. It does go a long way and we really, really do appreciate you. If you haven't already, please hit the like, follow or subscribe button. This does not go unnoticed. As well as that, if you guys do have any questions around the topic or just want to discuss anything in general, feel free to drop us a message on YouTube, Spotify or on our Instagram account.
You have been listening to Gains and Gossip.